Hello, second grade Smarties, and welcome to Lesson 27 in Module 1, A Season of Change. So today we are going to be exploring what is happening in our book, Sky Tree. But before we move on to our pizza bite question, I want us to talk a little bit about our pizza slice question. And that is, how does Sky Tree show the cycle of seasons? So this entire book is talking about a tree's life during the seasons. So, when we are thinking about the word cycle, a cycle is something that continues over and over again. It's something that happens in steps over and over again. So, think about our holidays. At the beginning of the year, we have New Year's, and then we have Valentine's Day, and Easter, and 4th of July, Thanksgiving, Christmas. And then after Christmas, we go back to New Year's. Now, there's other really important holidays, but those are the ones that stick out in my head. And I like to think of our holidays like a cycle. After New Year's, we can expect Valentine's Day. After Valentine's Day, we have Easter. So it moves in a cycle. It's events that happen in order over and over again. So think about our book, Sky Tree. Now, today we are exploring what is happening in this book. But in the past, when we are talking about what is happening with informational texts, we've used that buttons and boxes. We have that box, which has our main topic, what the book is all about. And then we have the buttons that give evidence about that topic. Okay, so we have that topic statement, so that box, and then we have our three buttons, which are our evidence. With literary texts, we use a story map, and a story map shows us the characters, the setting, the problem, and the resolution. Now, literary is another word for story. So, literary texts are books that tell a story. Now, when we are exploring today, Sky Tree, I want you to start thinking, do you think that we should use buttons and boxes, a story map, or do you think we might need to figure out what is happening in a different way? Tell me in the Ed Puzzle, what do you think? Should we use button and boxes like we do for informational texts? Should we use a story map for books that tell a story? Or do you think we might need to try something different? So I'm going to let you in on a secret. We're going to have to do something different today. We're not going to use buttons and boxes, and we're not going to use a story map. So let's explore what the author has to say about his book and how we can read it and understand it better. Thomas Locker says, Sky Tree invites adults and children to experience the life of a tree and its relationship to the sky in several different ways. Through storytelling, art appreciation, and scientific exploration, Sky Tree attempts to reach both the heart and the mind. So, Thomas Locker talked about how this book has some storytelling. So, it does tell the story of what? The life of a tree and its relationship to the sky, to the changing seasons. But is the changing seasons a problem? No, it's something that the tree experiences in its cycle. It's something that happens all the time. So this book doesn't tell a story with a problem and resolution, but it does have the main focus of the life of a tree. So he also talked about art appreciation. What kind of art do we see in this book? We saw oil paintings, and what did all of the oil paintings show us? Tell me in the Ed Puzzle, what do all the oil paintings show us in Sky Tree? It shows us the changes that the tree goes through during the seasons, and it shows us what the sky looks like too with those changing seasons. So Thomas Locker wants us to understand the cycle of seasons and how a tree goes through all those seasons. He wants us to appreciate art and showing us how the tree goes through changes. And then it talked about scientific exploration. How does this book help readers explore science? What is something that could be informational about this book? What do we learn about in this book? We learn about how the weather gets colder during fall and there's less sunlight and fewer hours of daytime and more of nighttime. That is something that we experience in real life. That is real life information. It talked about how birds migrate. It talked about how squirrels store food. It talked about how the turtle buried itself to hibernate. So, this book did give us information about the changes in seasons, but Thomas Locker is telling it as a story. So, today we are going to be talking about what is happening in this book, but we are going to show it in a different way. So, two of our books, The Little Yellow Leaf and A Color of His Own, were books that told a story. It had characters, it had problems, it had a resolution in a setting. This story focuses on the sky tree, but it talks about how it goes through changes over time rather than Skytree having a problem, right? So we are going to use something called a timeline to organize what happens to Skytree through the seasons. So what we are going to be doing is we are going to be adding key details that we see happen during the changes in season. What do you notice about the beginning of our timeline? So our beginning of the timeline starts in summer, it moves into autumn, then into winter, spring, and then ends in summer. What is something that you see is the same on this timeline? What is something that you notice on this timeline? Tell me in the Ed Puzzle. I noticed that our book starts in summer and ends in summer. So it shows the whole cycle. We start in summer and we move all the way through back to summer. So we are going to explore the pages and we are going to talk about the changes in seasons and the key details that happen with each season. So let's get started. Once a tree stood alone on a hill by the river. Through the long days, its leaves fluttered in the soft summer breeze. So, what do we learn about the tree during summer? What do we learn about the season of summer in this page? The leaves on the tree fluttered, and there's a soft summer breeze. Oh, goodness. All right. Come on, computer. Okay. All right, we're back. Miss Mason had some technical difficulties. So in summer, we learned that on the tree that the leaves fluttered. Those leaves were still green. The leaves are green during the summer. And we also learned that there is a soft breeze. Okay, let's move on to the next page. But then the days grew shorter and the nights longer. The winds became cold and the tree began to change. Autumn came. The leaves of the tree turned gold, orange, and red. Squirrels hurried to store nuts and acorns. The sun rose later each day. One morning, light glistened on a thin silver frost. By the end of the day, many leaves began to fall, first one and then another. On a gray day, an old snapping turtle buried herself in the river mud where she would sleep until spring. The tree's bare branches reached toward the sky. The clouds opened, and for a moment, the sky filled with branches. On a misty morning, a flock of birds landed where the tree's leaves had been. The birds chirped, squabbled, and sang, but suddenly their wings beat the air and they flew away. Clouds gathered and filled the tree's empty branches and then drifted away. All right, so we've moved on from summer to fall. What are some details that we learn about fall and trees in this section? What did you learn? Tell me two things. What did you learn about fall and trees in this chunk of the book? What is happening in this chunk? So we learned that the leaves turn color, that the leaves fall off the tree because colder weather comes in and there's longer nights and shorter days. So Miss Mason found this information from our pages, right? It talked about how that autumn came, the leaves of the tree turned colors. I also discovered that the days grew shorter and the nights longer, and the weather began to change. So that tells me that there was a change in season. Let's move on. So we talked about summer, we talked about autumn. What's going to come next? What season will come next? Winter. So let's see what happens to the tree and the sky during winter. Ice formed on the river's edge. With its roots deep in the earth, the tree stood ready for winter. Snow fell. Snug in their nest, a family of squirrels huddled close through the cold winter days. At night, millions of stars twinkled among the branches of the tree. Beneath the river ice, the old snapping turtle slept. The world was waiting for spring. All right. So before I show you the evidence that I put in our timeline, what is something that you learned about trees and winter in this chunk of the book? In this part of the book, what is happening to the tree and the season of winter? Tell me in the Ed Puzzle. So, from those pages, we learned that there's snow on the branches and that there is ice on the river. If there's snow and ice, that tells me it's winter. What does that tell me about the weather? It tells me that it's very cold, right? And that things are freezing. So, snow is frozen water. So, during winter, in some places, it gets so cold that water freezes. So, are there any leaves on the trees during winter? No. Remember, we talked about how trees prepare for winter during spring, summer, and fall. They use that sugar from leaves to stay alive during winter. All right, so what season's going to come next in our timeline? Spring. Let's see what happens in spring. Late one afternoon, a golden light streamed through the clouds and warmed the tree. The ice on the river began to melt, and the snow disappeared into the ground. The smell of wet earth filled the air. Squirrels raced through the fresh grass and up the tree. Sap rose to the tree's tight buds. All right, so now we've moved on to spring. What are some details that you heard that tell us it's spring? Think about what you heard about the tree and the change in weather. What are some things that told you that we went from winter to spring? Tell me in the Ed Puzzle. So from these pages, I heard that the snow was melting, which means that the sun was warming up the earth, was warming up the ground and the trees. On this page, it said that late one afternoon, a golden light streamed through the clouds and warmed the tree. So the warmer weather tells me there's a change in season. It also told me in this page that sap rose to the tree's tight buds. So those buds that will turn into leaves start to grow in spring. So what's our final season? We've made it through the cycle. We end the book in summer. Let's hear what happens in summer. The old snapper crawled out of the mud to lay her eggs on the warm hillside. The tree's leaves uncurled in the spring sunlight, and the birds returned to build nests for their young. The tree stood on the hill by the river. Once again, its leaves fluttered in the soft summer breeze. So, think about what we learned about summer at the beginning. What happens with the tree again in summer? Tell me in the Edpuzzle. What happens with the tree? The leaves flutter and there's a soft breeze again. So, this book, what we used was a timeline. We talked about what happened to the tree over different periods of time. And the different periods of time that we used were seasons. So, that cycle of seasons is what we use to tell what is going on in this book. So, looking at our timeline, I want you to start thinking, what are some important details that we can know about each season and how it affects the tree? During the summer, there's there's leaves on the tree because of that warmer weather and the sun shining down. During autumn, we start to see colder weather and longer nights and shorter days. That weather changes what happens to the tree. The leaves start to change colors and eventually fall off because they can't help the tree anymore. Then the leaves help the tree get ready for winter. And what kind of happens with the tree during winter? We see snow on the branches and ice freezes the water. So the water freezes and snow collects on branches in the ground. But then in the spring, what do we start to see more of? We start to see more sun. And the sun warms the tree and the ground. And because it warms the tree, what starts to melt? The snow and ice. And with that warmer weather and those longer days, what starts to grow back? The buds that turn to leaves. So it is a cycle, friends. We see this year after year. All right, so I want you to start thinking about how we have learned about those changes, about what is going on. Yesterday, we talked about revising a paragraph. So, revising means that we make changes and add or take away words and sentences to make our writing better. So, all the time, think about when Miss Mason comments on your writing. Sometimes I will congratulate you for your writing, and sometimes I'll remind you to add something or take something away. I do that to help you make your writing better. That is called revision. So we have a draft paragraph right here that is missing some things. So we can use this checklist to help us think about what we are missing and what we can add. So when we are doing an informative writing, we need to make sure that we introduce with a topic statement. We have 3 sentences with evidence, and we conclude with we end the paragraph with a conclusion. So as I read this, I want you to start thinking about what is missing in this paragraph. You ready? All right, here we go. First, ice forms on the rivers. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me read the question first. It says, how does the river change in Skytree? First, ice forms on the river's edge in autumn. Then, winter ice and snow covered the river. The river's water changes as temperature change with the seasons. So what are we missing in that paragraph? I heard at the beginning, first and then. Would that be a topic statement or my evidence? It's my evidence, right? So my paragraph started with the first piece of evidence and the second piece of evidence. What am I missing at the very beginning? I'm missing my topic statement. So as we are thinking about our topic statement, what can we look at to help us write our topic statement? We can look at our conclusion. So our conclusion said the river's water changes as temperature change with the seasons. So, I'm thinking about how I can make a topic statement. So Miss Mason is going to add this as we are talking about it. So my topic statement, I am thinking that I need to answer my question because that's what I do with a topic statement. How does the river change in Skytree? So I'm talking about the river. So I'm going to start my topic statement with the river. what does the river do? It changes with the change in blank. In the Ed puzzle, I want you to finish our topic statement. The river changes with the change in seasons, right? It even says that in our conclusion. So here, I'm going to add my topic statement back now. The river changes with the change in seasons. First, ice forms at the river's edge in autumn. Then, winter ice and snow cover the river. First, then, and finally. So I'm missing my last detail. What happens to ice when the weather gets warmer? So finally, the ice, what happens with ice when it gets warmer? Finish this sentence and tell me in the Ed puzzle. So we could say the river changes with the change in seasons. First, ice forms at the river's edge in autumn. Then winter snow cover the river. Finally, the ice melts and the river is filled with water again. The river's water changes as temperature change with the seasons. So your final piece of evidence should have talked about how the ice melts with the warmer weather. All right. And so let's move into our deep dive. So guys, I want you to really think about your writing. How can you go back and check to see if you need to add anything or take things away? Use a mental checklist, or you could even make your own checklist to think about how you can revise your writing. All right, and finally, we're going to end with our deep dive. So we are talking about the words open and drifted. So the first thing I'm going to do is I am going to read some sentences from the book, and these are the illustrations that go with them. It says, the clouds opened, and for a moment, the sky filled the branches. Clouds gathered and filled the trees' empty branches and then drifted away. So the words that we are looking at are opened and filled. How did the author describe the season of fall? What happens with the weather in fall? The clouds open, clouds gathered and filled. What do we see a lot of during the season of fall? Tell me in the puzzle. With the weather, what do we see a lot of? We see some clouds, right? We see clouds opening and the sky fills the branches, but we also see clouds gather and fill the empty branches. So, when we see clouds in the sky, what does that sometimes tell us is going to happen? It might get stormy. What season? What season do we not see a lot of sun in? And sometimes frozen water comes from the sky during the season. Winter, right? So fall is getting ready for the season of winter. So the changes in the weather happen with the changes in seasons too. So we see a lot more clouds in the sky during fall because that's telling me that the weather is changing and preparing for cloudy, cold weather in winter. So open means not covered or closed. Drifted means to be carried by wind or water. So open and drifted are action words that describe what the sky looks like in fall and preparing for winter. Drifted tells us that the clouds were moving, but not too fast through the sky. So yesterday we talked about how certain words can kind of spark our imagination. What do the words open and drifted help us think about in these pages? What does open and drifted help us use our imagination to think of? The Clouds. So the author does a really great job of using describing words, of using action words to spark our imagination of what this story looks like in our minds. All right, Smarties, as always, keep that growth mindset. Good learners do hard things and start looking outside to see what kind of signs are you seeing with the change of season to fall. All right, Smarties, happy learning, and I will see you tomorrow with another lesson. Bye, guys.